Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. In Myanmar, 7 people have been killed and several others wounded after police opened fire on demonstrators in Yangon and Dawi. This comes as police continued a sweeping crackdown against opponents of military rule for the second day. Meanwhile, the country's United Nations ambassador has vowed to fight back after the military fired him for urging UN action against the coup. Pakistan has urged the UN Human Rights Council to conduct an impartial probe into human rights abuses in occupied Kashmir. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, Khalil Hashmi, briefed the council about Indian atrocities in the valley. He said the United Nations' credibility will erode if it fails to hold India accountable. The Taliban have called on the United States to honor its commitments made under the Doha peace deal. In a statement issued on the first anniversary of the agreement, the group said it is committed to all contents of the accord. The Taliban say all participants of the signing ceremony have an obligation to complete implementation of the agreement. In Hong Kong, police have charged 47 activists with subversion under a new national security law. They were accused of organizing an unofficial primary election ahead of last year's legislative polls. This is the largest use yet of the new security law, which came into force after mass anti-government protests in 2019. India has registered the biggest single-day jump in coronavirus cases since January after almost 17,000 people tested positive overnight. Meanwhile, Brazil has recorded over 1,300 deaths and 60,000 cases for the 5th consecutive day. Pakistan has registered over 1,100 new cases and 23 deaths during the last 24 hours, taking its toll to 12,860. Globally, the coronavirus has claimed over 2.5 million lives and infected nearly 114 million people. And in the Pakistan Super League, the Karachi Kings will take on the Lahore Qalandars in today's only fixture at the National Stadium in Karachi. Both the teams have 4 points each, but the Kings are in second position in the PSL table, one ahead of the Qalandars. For more news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Myanmar, 7 people have been killed and several others wounded after police opened fire on demonstrators in Yangon and Dawi. 9 people have so far been killed during the protests since the military coup on the 1st of February. This comes as police continue a sweeping crackdown against the opponents of military rule for the second day. They opened fire in different parts of the main city of Yangon after stun grenades and tear gas failed to disperse the crowds. Police also cracked down on a huge protest in the second city of Mandalay. Meanwhile, the country's United Nations ambassador has vowed to fight back after the military fired him for urging UN action against the coup. Pakistan has urged the UN Human Rights Council to conduct an impartial probe into human rights abuses in occupied Kashmir. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, Khalil Hashmi, briefed the council about the Indian atrocities in the valley. He said the United Nations' credibility will erode if it fails to hold India accountable. The envoy also thanked UN Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet for voicing concerns over the situation in occupied Kashmir. Earlier, a group of UN experts termed Indian troops' attacks on Kashmiri journalists as an attempt to silence dissent. The Taliban have called on the United States to honor its commitments made under the Doha peace deal. The group has issued a statement on the first anniversary of the agreement it signed with the United States in Qatar.
The Taliban said the deal has laid the ground for a peaceful Afghanistan. They said the release of remaining prisoners and end of blacklists are part of the agreement that have yet to be implemented. The statement read, practical steps must be undertaken to expedite the ongoing intra-Afghan dialogue process. The group said it is committed on its part to all contents of the agreement. It added the Taliban viewed the pact's implementation as a sole effective tool for resolving the Afghan issue. The Taliban say all participants of the signing ceremony have an obligation to complete implementation of the agreement.
In India, the protesting farmers are gearing up for the March 1st rally against the centre's agriculture laws in northern Uttarakhand state. Farmer leader Rakesh Tikayat will tour 5 states to drum up support for the ongoing agitation. Addressing a rally, another leader said Narendra Modi is the prime minister of a handful of capitalists and mill owners. He added time has come to uproot the BJP government. The union has demanded a judicial inquiry into the Republic Day violence, calling it a deep conspiracy against farmers. Over 200 farmers have died during the ongoing protests on the New Delhi borders, including 5 who committed suicide. The coalition forces in Yemen say they have thwarted Houthis' ballistic missile attack on the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Saudi state media said that the coalition also destroyed 5 explosive-laden drones heading towards southern cities. It said that the debris from the missile caused damage to 1 house in Riyadh, but there were no casualties. The coalition statement said the drones were aimed at civilians. Houthi rebels claim they attacked Riyadh overnight with a ballistic missile and 15 drones. A spokesperson for the Houthis said that the attack began on Saturday night and continued into the early hours of Sunday. This comes a day after the Saudi coalition destroyed 4 Houthi drones. Iran has condemned United States airstrikes in Syria and denied responsibility for the rocket attacks on U.S. targets in Iraq. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said this in a meeting with his Iraqi counterpart Fouad Hussein in Tehran. Following the meeting, Zarif urged Baghdad to identify the perpetrators of the recent attacks on American forces. In a statement, he also said the attacks were suspicious and sought to damage the Iran-Iraq ties. Iranian state media said Hussein assured that Baghdad will not allow incidents tarnish relations between the two countries. This is Hussein's second trip to the Islamic Republic in less than a month. The European Union says talks on its ties with Turkey and on the Eastern Mediterranean will take place in March. European Council President Charles Michel made the announcement after a summit of EU leaders. Michel said Turkey is a NATO member, but there have been difficulties in the relationship in recent months. He said the goal of the discussion is to take into the account of the latest developments and make decisions. Turkey's relationship with the EU members Greece and Cyprus has deteriorated over energy rights in the Eastern Mediterranean. In Hong Kong, police have charged 47 activists with subversion under a new national security law. They were accused of organizing an unofficial primary election ahead of last year's legislative polls. The accused will appear in court on Monday morning. Chinese and Hong Kong officials say the primary was an attempt to overthrow the government. This is the largest use yet of the new security law, which came into force last year after mass anti-government protests in 2019. Beijing says the law was needed to bring stability. The United States has called for an immediate withdrawal of what it says Eritrean and Amhara forces from Ethiopia's Tigray region. U.S. Secretary of State says Washington is deeply concerned by the worsening humanitarian crisis in the region. Secretary Antony Blinken said the United States strongly condemns the killings, sexual assaults, and other rights violations reported in Tigray. In a statement, Blinken said those responsible must be held accountable. Earlier, Amnesty International said Eritrean forces in Tigray's Aksum town killed hundreds of civilians last year. It said troops opened fire in the streets and conducted raids in a massacre that may amount to a crime against humanity. Eritrea has rejected the accusations. In Somalia, 9 al-Shabaab militants have been killed after they mounted an attack on an army base in the town of Qasihdir. Police say 11 others were also wounded. The Al-Qaeda-affiliated Al-Shabaab has not yet commented on the attack. Earlier, 3 people were killed in a roadside blast that targeted Deputy Army Chief Abdurrazzaq Khalif Elmi in the capital, Mogadishu. Elmi has survived the attack. India has registered the biggest single-day jump in coronavirus cases since January after almost 17,000 tested positive overnight. Brazil has recorded over 1,300 deaths and 60,000 cases for the 5th consecutive day. The United States has approved Johnson & Johnson's single-dose COVID-19 vaccine. This is the 3rd vaccine authorized in the country and is 85% protective against severe illness. Washington says shipments of 20 million doses could begin as early as Monday. New Zealand's biggest city, Auckland, has entered the 2nd lockdown in a month to contain a cluster of the United Kingdom variant. The virus has so far claimed 2.5 million lives globally and infected nearly 114 million. In Pakistan, 23 people have lost their lives to the coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The virus has claimed 12,860 lives in the country. The health ministry says more than 1,100 people tested positive for the virus overnight. It added there are currently over 21,000 active cases in the country, out of which 1,994 are admitted in hospitals. Nearly 580,000 people have been infected in the country and 545,000 have recovered. In Spain's city of Barcelona, more than a dozen protesters have been arrested over charges of assaulting police in a fresh unrest over the jailing of a rapper. Police chased protesters after they set fire to a police van and smashed shops and banks. Authorities said firefighters were fighting multiple blazes started by the demonstrators. Earlier, around 2,000 marched through the city to call for Pablo Hansel's release. Hansel was arrested on the 16th of February for mocking Spain's royalty in violation of the country's gag law. The detention prompted a debate over freedom of expression and sparked protests in Barcelona and Madrid. A group of gunmen has killed 11 people in Mexico's western state of Jalisco. The state is one of the epicenters of Mexico's drug-related warfare. Authorities say the gunmen came on a truck and opened fire on people. In a statement, the state's prosecutor office said a woman and a minor were wounded in the attack. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador took office in late 2018, pledging to reduce entrenched violence. But he continues to grapple with mass killings and tens and thousands of homicides a year. In December, Jalisco's former governor Aristotle Sandoval was shot dead in a restaurant in the town of Puerto Vallarta. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. China's Ministry of Science and Technology has unveiled the selected top 10 domestic scientific advances of 2020. Beijing ranked the COVID-19 pandemic prevention and control mechanism at the top. The Chang'e's 5 probe retrieval of lunar samples and the deep-sea manned submersible Fendozihe diving record were also listed. Chinese scientists' efforts in research on the transmission of human genetic materials have been listed. The breakthrough of quantum interference in chemical reactions has also been recognized. Other advances include research on the biomarkers and potential intervention targets for organ aging in animals. Meanwhile, recreating the history of over 300 million years of biodiversity changes on Earth has also been enumerated. A big iceberg approaching the size of Greater London has broken away from the Brunt ice shelf in Antarctica. In an aerial video showing the separation almost 10 years after scientists discovered the first cracks. The British Antarctic Survey compared the berg in size to the English country of Bedfordshire, measuring nearly 1,300 square kilometers. The Halley Research Station, situated on the 150-meter thick Brunt ice shelf, is not expected to be impacted. The survey said in a written statement that it is located on an area of the ice shelf still connected to the continent. Scientists say the iceberg is expected to either move away or run aground not far from the Brunt ice shelf. In Kenya, hunting and lodging pose a significant risk to both fauna and flora as authorities search to contain the problem. But an environmental group has come up with an interesting solution which involves electric fences. This report has all the details.
Kenyan group the Rhino Ark Trust has put up fences around two key areas where rainfall feeds the rivers. It is adding more fencing around a third area in Mount Kenya, where a large portion has already been constructed. A fence is encircling the canopy of the Aburu forest, which has put an end to illegal logging and charcoal burning.
It's completely done. We did about 43.3 kilometers, and it's done now. And now the work we are doing now is to maintain now the fence itself, and also to do the sensitization to the community so that they can be able to own it.
The fences help protect wildlife from hunting and trees from being chopped down, but they do not cut off local communities. Local farmers have been resettled in land adjacent to the forest, where they grow fruits like tree tomatoes. Farmers believe the trees will help ensure the rain.
We now don't depend on seasons. This time of the year, you would not see anything green here. The ground would be so perched. That is one of the biggest changes that I can attest to. You can now see it's green everywhere, meaning the environment has really changed.
Rhino Ark Trust estimates that its fences protect 570,000 hectares of mountain forests that are Kenya's key rain-catching areas. Kenya aims to increase its forest cover to 10% of its landmass by 2022, attaining the standard set by the UN.
Giorgio Armani envisions what our style will look post-pandemic in his Fall/Winter 2021 line. The collection was live-streamed at the virtual Milan Fashion Week.
The veteran designer, affectionately called King Giorgio in his native Italy, presented creations with plenty of romantic touches. Dabs of watery hues, greens with turquoise shimmers, pale purples and soft pinks, accents of ruffles running down the collars of shirts. For men, they were geometric patchworks of velvet and wool, or brightly colored floral patterns. A big green gorilla statue standing in the middle of the runway dominated the scene. It telegraphed a message of respect for Mother Nature and its creatures. Milan Fashion Week is a virtual event this season, with designers sharing videos of their presentations on the digital platform, instead of hosting the usual buzzing catwalk shows due to COVID-19 restrictions.
China's National Bureau of Statistics says its economy grew over 2% year-on-year in 2020 despite the raging pandemic. Official data shows China has become the overriding force driving the recovery of the global economy. Beijing's annual gross domestic product exceeded $15 trillion for the first time. The economy made a comeback after April with over 3% growth after dipping to over 6% in the first quarter. Deputy head of the National Bureau of Statistics, Shen Liayun, said China has made great economic achievements during the 13th of the five-year plan period from 2016 to 2020. He said Beijing is now tipped to command around 17% of the global economy. Most stock markets in the Gulf have traded lower after Friday's slide in oil prices and global equities, though Qatar bucked the trend. Saudi Arabia's benchmark index lost over 0.5%, with Al Rajhi Bank down more than 1%. Dubai's main share index also fell over 0.5%, weighed down by a drop in Emaar Properties and Emirates Integrated Telecommunications. In Abu Dhabi, the index slipped marginally, with the country's largest lender, First Abu Dhabi Bank and Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, sliding. The Qatari index, however, edged up fractionally, helped by a 2% rise in utility company Qatar Electricity and Water. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.